The cub in the crater. The planet Varos Prime wasn't supposed to be dangerous. According to the briefing, it was classified as a Category Green terraforming candidate. Minimal hostile life, rich in minerals, and stable enough for long-term colonization. That was the reason Captain Elias Creed had been sent ahead of the main unit, to map terrain, calibrate equipment, and flag anomalies. A simple solo recon mission. But Simple vanished the moment the distress beacon came online. Elias stood at the edge of a shattered impact crater, eyes narrowed behind the visor of his recon helmet. Smoke curled lazily from twisted metal and scorched stone. Whatever had crashed here hadn't come from orbit. The pattern was too chaotic. This wasn't debris, it was a battle site. He stepped cautiously down the slope, weapon ready but lowered. His boots crunched over cooling slag and red soil. The quiet eerily complete. No birds, no wind, only the low hum of his biosuit. The signal led him to a fractured chunk of alien alloy, half buried under rubble. His visor flickered as it attempted to translate the glyphs etched into its side. Nothing in the Terran database. But what caught his attention wasn't the tech. It was the sound. A faint, ragged whimper. Elias pivoted toward a collapsed cluster of carbon metal branches and carefully lifted the edge. His breath caught. Lying in the dust, pinned under debris, was a small creature, feline in shape, gold-furred with faint bioluminescent stripes along its spine. Its front paw was crushed beneath a panel. Bright eyes, wide with pain and fear, locked onto him. Instinct screamed. Unknown species, potentially dangerous. Protocol demanded, observe, record, do not engage. But Elias saw more than an alien. He saw a child. He dropped his weapon and knelt. Easy. I'm not here to hurt you. The creature didn't understand the words, but it seemed to understand the tone. Elias worked quickly, leveraging the debris with a broken strut. With a hiss, he lifted it enough to free the limb. The creature whimpered again, but didn't bite or claw. Blood, deep violet, flowed from the paw. He activated his medkit, spraying biofoam over the wound. The foam sealed instantly, prompting a low, confused growl from the cub. You'll live, Elias murmured, wrapping it gently in his cloak. It trembled against his chest, no heavier than a house cat. He could feel its tiny heart pounding. He looked up. The sky was darkening, and a second sun had begun to set behind the crimson cliffs. Elias activated his beacon and pulled up his shelter kit. They'd camp here for the night. The makeshift shelter hummed softly in the darkness, emitting heat and light as programmed. Elias sat cross-legged, the cub curled beside him, breathing shallowly in sleep. He studied it. It had slight tusks, retractable claws, and a long, prehensile tail. Its ears twitched at every sound, even in unconsciousness. This was no ordinary animal. Who are you, little one? He asked aloud. Where's your family? He glanced at the crashed fragment again. It hadn't been a pod. It was part of a vessel, military grade, judging by the scorch plating, which meant this cub hadn't just fallen from the sky. It had survived something far worse. Elias ran a scan, but the results came back fragmented. The alloy shielding was distorting the signal. He noted it for the report. The night grew colder. Elias leaned back, cradling the cub like a wounded soldier. He thought of his own daughter, back on Europa Station. He wondered if some alien out there was looking for this little one the way he'd searched for his own. The first roar echoed just past midnight. It was deep, resonant, and close. Elias froze. The cub jolted awake and let out a series of high-pitched calls. Responses? A second roar answered, this one closer. The ground seemed to vibrate beneath him. Elias stood slowly, eyes scanning the tree line. Shapes moved, large, fast, and silent. Red eyes blinked in the dark. He was surrounded. He stepped in front of the cub instinctively, one hand on his sidearm. The shapes emerged. Massive, humanoid lion creatures, covered in black fur and armor-like plating. At least 6 of them, some walking upright, others loping forward like beasts. One stepped forward, taller than Elias by a full head. Its mane was streaked with silver, and glowing orange rings blinked along its shoulders. Its expression was unreadable, but its eyes were locked on the cub. Elias raised his hand slowly. I don't want to fight. I helped your kid. The alien stepped closer. Its gaze flicked to the cub, then to Elias. No weapons were drawn. Instead, the alien placed a hand, enormous, clawed, and armored, on Elias' shoulder. It didn't squeeze. It didn't strike. It simply held, as if measuring him. And then, to Elias' disbelief, the alien exhaled a low, rumbling sound. Not a growl, something closer to gratitude. The pack moved in closer, not with aggression, but interest. The cub mewed weakly and limped toward them. One of the lion-like beings scooped it up gently and cradled it. Elias remained still. He had no idea what came next, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't alone anymore. The pack arrives. Elias stood still, heart pounding under his biosuit as the alien pack surrounded him. The massive lion-like creatures moved with predatory grace, each one taller and bulkier than any human. Their fur shimmered with streaks of deep black and iron gray, accentuated by glowing orange implants embedded in their shoulders, chests, and along their spines. Their armor wasn't worn, it was integrated, grown into them. The one that had touched his shoulder, clearly the leader, still stood within arm's reach, studying Elias with glowing amber eyes. In its arms, the injured cub, Cinder, rested, already curling against its kin. The rest of the pack fanned out, inspecting the crash site and Elias' temporary shelter. They didn't draw weapons. Not yet, but every move radiated restrained power. Elias slowly lowered his arms. I'm not your enemy, he said quietly, knowing they couldn't understand his words, yet hoping his tone spoke enough. The alpha let out a deep, resonant growl, not aggressive but curious. Then something strange happened. Elias felt a pressure behind his eyes, a pulse, a presence. Then came the voice, not words but emotions and images. A transmission not through sound, but directly into his mind. He saw flashes, the cub limping through fire, the crash, panic. Then a sudden vision of Elias lifting the rubble, sealing the wound, cradling the cub like one of his own. You protected young. Elias staggered. What? How are you? Another pulse. Images again. Not memories, but judgments. Rage. Suspicion. The pack showing images of other humans. Burning forests, broken cities, weapons drawn. Then, Elias again. A contradiction. Why? He understood. They were asking, why would a human, a species they viewed as violent, save one of theirs? Elias took a breath. Because it was hurt. Alone. I couldn't leave it. The alpha cocked its head. Again, the emotional wave surged, this time with something new. Not suspicion. Not rage. Recognition. The alpha gently set the cub down and motioned with one clawed hand. A beckon. Elias didn't resist when they circled around him, forming a protective triangle. The message was clear. You're coming with us. The journey through the jungle was surreal. They traveled fast, effortlessly weaving through trees and stone arches as if they knew every inch. Elias jogged to keep up, his biosuit compensating for the heat. Every so often, one of the smaller lions, scouts perhaps, would stop and scan the terrain using a circular device grown into their arms. After nearly an hour, they descended into a series of narrow canyons. Orange-red cliffs loomed overhead, and strange glowing vines pulsed along the rock faces. At the base, hidden behind a thick growth of crimson moss, lay a massive entrance carved into the stone. Elias followed them into the shadows, uncertain of what waited beyond. The tunnel gave way to a breathtaking sight. A cavernous space opened up before him, a natural basin transformed into a living enclave. Bioluminescent trees spiraled upward, and crystalline structures emitted soft, warm light. Structures have been shaped rather than built, blending stone, metal, and organic material. Alien children, smaller versions of the pack, ran freely along bridges and terraces. Adult Urikai watched Elias with a mixture of caution and fascination as he entered, flanked by the patrol. The alpha turned and finally addressed him, not with sound, but with another pulse of shared memory. This time, it wasn't about Cinder. It was him. They were scanning him, learning. They saw his life flash. Training on Mars, his wife, his daughter's birth. War zones he'd survived, friends he'd buried. Then it stopped. The Alpha looked away and gave a short, vibrating grunt. The pack dispersed, but none turned their back to him. Elias stood in the middle of the enclave, trying to steady himself. What now? The only reply was a gentle growl from behind. Cinder, limping but alive, approached and rubbed its head against his leg. The act drew gasps, yes, even alien ones from the watching crowd. A bond had been formed. Later, Elias sat near a shallow pool as the sun, or one of them, dipped low above the cliffs. A smaller Verikai approached, setting down a bowl of blue fluid. He sniffed it cautiously, then took a sip. Sweet, cool, with an odd aftertaste like honey and mint. The cub curled up beside him, purring softly. The Alpha returned, no longer in armor, but draped in bone-carved adornments. Without words, he knelt beside Elias and placed a hand on his shoulder again. This time, the pulse was slower, more controlled. You have done what many would not. You chose honor, life, family. Then another image, Elias, leading humans alongside Verikai warriors, united under two suns. Perhaps you are not like the others. Perhaps the war can end. Elias didn't know what they meant or how deep the conflict ran. But as the alien leader rose and the enclave lights shimmered like starlight, one thing was clear. He wasn't their prisoner. He was their guest. And maybe, just maybe, the first human to be accepted by the pack. Man among lions, Elias woke to a strange rhythm, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrated through the stone floor beneath him. At first, he thought it was machinery, but as his eyes adjusted to the bioluminescent glow bathing the chamber, he realized it was something else. Music. A low, pulsating chant rose in harmony with the deep heartbeat of drums, the sound echoing through the canyon enclave like the breath of the world itself. Cinder stirred beside him, letting out a soft yawn and stretching its golden limbs before nudging Elias with its head. He chuckled, gently rubbing the soft fur behind the cub's ears. You've got a whole army of teeth and claws, and you still act like a house cat, he murmured. A shadow fell over the entrance. Elias turned to find a tall Verikai, female, waiting silently. She wore robes of braided vine fiber, bone medallions clinking softly against her chest. Her eyes were calm, curious. She extended a hand, not threatening, but formal. An invitation. Elias stood, checking his suit systems. Power at 62%. Communications still jammed. Weapon holstered, but deactivated. He gave a nod. Lead the way. They moved through the enclave, now alive with activity. Verikai of all ages stood around central pillars etched with glowing sigils. Some were sharpening bone-edged weapons. Others cleaned gear or chanted. But all paused to glance at Elias as he passed. He was no longer a stranger. But he wasn't one of them, either. Not yet. They entered a wide chamber carved into the cliffside, filled with natural light filtering through a translucent stone ceiling. Dozens of Verikai stood in a semicircle around a central dais. Waiting in the center was Varric, the Alpha who had first confronted him. Varric stepped forward, claws sheathed, and extended both hands outward. The same pulse returned, not aggressive this time, but structured, deliberate. You will be tested, not in blood, but in truth. A crystal-tipped staff was placed before Elias. He hesitated, then touched it. The moment his fingers made contact, the world changed. He stood on a vast, smoky battlefield. Flames licked across shattered structures, and black ships hovered above, raining fire. He saw Verikai warriors being overwhelmed, laser-fire plasma grenades, mechanized drones, and leading the assault. Humans, but not like him, armored, faceless, marching in formation, drones at their flanks. Elias backed away, horrified. This isn't real. It is memory, came Varric's voice in his mind. This is what your kind brought to us long ago. Another flash. A human commander giving the order to fire on a Verikai nursery, thinking it was a military facility. Elias nearly collapsed at the vision of cubs screaming beneath rubble. We hid. We scattered. We survived. But we never forgot. The flames faded, replaced by a vision of Elias, kneeling in a crater, cradling cinder. A spark in the dark. A contradiction to their history. The vision ended. Elias found himself back in the hall, sweat on his brow, heart hammering. Varric studied him. Elias didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said softly, "I didn't know. I never would have let that happen. Not all of us are like them." Varric nodded slowly. "You're not judged by their actions, only by your own." Later, Elias was led to a high balcony overlooking the jungle canopy. Cinder followed him like a shadow, now walking more confidently despite its limp. A young Verikai technician approached, carrying a damaged piece of alien equipment, one of the crash signal nodes. It sparked with intermittent light. They set it down near Elias, motioning for him to look. Curious, he knelt, scanning it. "Power converter shot," he muttered. "No proper ground shielding. No wonder it fried." The Verikai watched silently as Elias rummaged through his field pack, removing a universal connector and patch cord. With some improvisation, he bypassed the burned-out module and spliced in a redirect to his portable core. The device lit up, emitting a steady hum. The young technician blinked in surprise and bowed its head, a clear gesture of respect. Varric appeared behind him, nodding. "You build. You heal. You understand." Elias stood. "That's what we're supposed to do out here. Make things better." Varric gazed out at the horizon. "There is another ship coming. Yours." Elias' stomach sank. "Extraction team? Heavily armed. They believe you lost. They will bring death if we greet them as we are." The Verikai leader turned to him. "You must speak for us." Elias nodded slowly. "I will, but they don't trust easily. They'll shoot first if they see you." Varric placed a heavy hand on his shoulder again. "Then you must make them see what we see." That night, Elias stared up at the alien stars, Cinder resting beside him, purring softly. He was no diplomat, no hero, just a scout with a conscience. But he now carried the weight of a fragile peace between two species who barely understood each other, and a looming threat that could shatter it all in a single volley. He clenched his jaw and activated his wristcom. "Command, this is Captain Elias Creed. I'm alive, and I need you to listen carefully. When empathy roars." The dropship split the sky like a blade. Elias stood atop the canyon ridge, a line of red dust trailing behind him as the wind picked up. The Verikai enclave lay hidden below, cloaked by the cliffs and the vines that covered their sanctuary. But the humans wouldn't need eyes to find it. They had scanners, thermal lenses, and itchy trigger fingers. His wrist comm crackled. "Captain Creed, this is Lieutenant Archer of the Terraforge Response Unit. We received your distress ping. Hold position. You will be extracted in 15. Elias grimaced. 15 minutes to prevent a war. Behind him, Varric emerged silently from the stone archway. The towering Alpha wore no armor now, only a ceremonial band across his chest, marked with silver bone and tribal etchings. Cinder stood beside him, no longer limping, but wary. "You sure about this?" Elias asked, turning toward the alien leader. "My people shoot first. They won't stop to ask why you brought me back alive." Varric's golden eyes glowed faintly in the early dawn. "We do not hide behind fear. You carry our truth now." Elias nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. This wasn't diplomacy. This was a gamble. One breath in the wrong direction, one raised rifle, and both sides would bleed. The shuttle's silhouette appeared over the ridge, sleek, armored, and armed to the teeth. Gun turrets on either wing pivoted to track the heat signatures below. Elias stepped forward, hands raised. "This is Captain Elias Creed. Do not open fire. I am not under duress. I am accompanied by sentient natives. Do not engage." There was a pause, then static. "Confirm identity with code." Elias rattled off his biometric sequence. The guns didn't lower. "Captain, move away from hostiles. We have permission to neutralize." "No," he barked. "Stand down. They saved me. They're not the threat." Behind him, Cinder growled. The dropship hovered, loud and heavy, the dust screaming across the ridge. A side hatch opened. For soldiers in matte gray power armor stormed out, rifles raised, scanning the ridge. Elias stepped directly into their path, arms out. Put the weapons down. The lead Marine hesitated. Sir, protocol requires. I am the protocol. Look at them. Elias pointed at Varrock and the two other Virikai, now cresting the ridge. They didn't kill me. They protected me. The cub, he pointed to Cinder, who had moved cautiously forward, was injured. I saved it. That's the only reason I'm standing here. The Marines were still tense, fingers near their triggers. Then something happened. Cinder, eyes locked on Elias, padded forward and pressed its head gently against his leg, just as it had in the Enclave. A display of trust. The lead Marine stared. Is that a juvenile? They're sentient, Elias said. They have language, culture, families. And they remember what our kind did to them decades ago. The second soldier muttered. I thought they were extinct. No, they were hiding from us. There was silence. Then, Creed, return to the shuttle. Debrief is mandatory. Elias turned toward the open bay. Not without them. You're refusing direct evacuation orders? I'm telling you, this isn't just a survival report. It's a first contact treaty waiting to happen. If we walk away now, we lose everything. You shoot one of them, and you're reigniting a war that should have ended decades ago. Another long silence. Then a voice from the command deck, colder this time. If they follow you, they're considered military assets or threats. Do not bring them aboard. This is your final warning. Elias clenched his jaw. He turned to Varrock. They won't accept you yet. But maybe, just maybe, they'll listen if we build something here. The Alpha stared at him for a moment, then placed one heavy hand over Elias' chest, claws just barely brushing the armor. A gesture of respect, of trust. Then build we shall. Elias nodded. I'll stay. The soldiers behind him shifted uneasily. Sir, I'm not returning to base. Not yet. Inform command, I'm invoking the first contact clause. Section 9 of the Terran Exo Protocol. Diplomatic stay. The comm crackled. Disbelief. Frustration. But no denial. 2 weeks later, the ridge was no longer empty. A small outpost had been constructed, modular habitats connected to the Virikai Enclave by a narrow bridge of polished stone and steel. Human engineers and scientists had arrived. Carefully, respectfully, the first Terran-Virikai treaty was in drafting. And every evening, Elias sat beside the canyon pool, watching the sun dip beneath the red cliffs. Cinder, now stronger, pounced between rocks. Varrock would sometimes join, silent and watchful, sharing quiet stories and pulses of thought and image. Peace had not come easy, but it had started with a single act of empathy. A wounded cub, a man who refused to walk away, and a pack that chose not to attack, but to listen.